Welcome to Science Snippets Fun Facts and Trivia. Today, we bring you zombie science. Could they actually exist? Alright, let's start with the basics. What is a zombie, really? The word zombie has been thrown around in pop culture for decades. But the idea itself dates back much further, with roots in spiritual beliefs, folklore, and even religious practices that originated in places like West Africa and Haiti. So where did it all begin? And why have these stories stuck with humanity across time and space? The term zombie is widely thought to come from the Haitian word zombie, or the Congo word nzambi, which roughly translate to spirit of a dead person. In Haitian folklore, a zombie isn't the brain-eating, shambling creature we see in movies. It's more of a tragic figure, a person who has been brought back to life, but not quite as they were before. Instead of a complete resurrection, these beings exist in a sort of limbo, alive, but without the essence that made them who they were. Their autonomy, emotions, and will are stripped away, often bound to serve someone else. The roots of zombie folklore are deeply intertwined with the brutal history of slavery in the Caribbean. For the enslaved, death was sometimes seen as a kind of release, a journey back to their homeland. The concept of being turned into a zombie, unable to find peace, even in death, was terrifying. Imagine dying, only to be forced back to life to serve someone else all over again. But this time without even the freedom of your own mind. In Haitian voodoo, zombies weren't just legend. It was believed that a powerful priest, or boker, could use a form of sorcery to reanimate the dead. The process often involved something called zombie powder, which supposedly included a variety of toxic ingredients, including tetrodotoxin, a deadly neurotoxin found in pufferfish. This powder was said to put people into a near-death state, slowing down their bodily functions so much that they would appear dead. Once revived, they'd remain under the boker's control, like sleepwalkers with no memory of their past life. The reality, of course, was different. Those who were said to have been zombified often suffered long-lasting effects from the powder, leading to physical and psychological conditions that made them appear like living dead to others. But the legend of the boker's power and the fear of becoming a zombie took on a life of its own. It became a warning, a dark story, to reinforce respect for voodoo and its practices. By the early 20th century, the word zombie caught the attention of the Western world. Authors and travelers, intrigued by these tales from Haiti, began writing about them. One of the earliest and most influential accounts was written by a man named William Seabrook in his 1929 book, The Magic Island. Seabrook recounted his experiences in Haiti and described witnessing the eerie phenomenon of zombification. His work captivated readers and painted a vivid, haunting picture of the Haitian zombie. Soon, Hollywood caught on, with films like White Zombie in 1932, introducing this mysterious concept to American audiences. And from there, the legend took off, becoming what we now know as the classic zombie. Over time, Hollywood transformed the Haitian zombie, a creature bound by sorcery, into something altogether different. A decaying, flesh-eating corpse brought back to life by some mysterious virus or radioactive exposure. But beneath the fiction, that original essence of the zombie, a person stripped of their will and autonomy, still resonates with us on a psychological level. So, why does this idea of the zombie continue to captivate us? Part of it might be that zombies tap into our deepest fears, not just of death, but of a fate far worse. losing our minds and becoming trapped, a prisoner within our own body, no longer in control of who we are. This primal fear is universal, transcending cultures and even time itself. Now let's dive into the pop culture version of zombies, the image most of us recognize today. Zombies as we know them have become iconic figures in movies, video games, and even music videos. But how did we go from tales of the tragic, controlled zombie of Haitian folklore to the shuffling, brain-craving monsters that dominate our screens? It's been quite a transformation. The turning point came in 1968 with a groundbreaking film directed by George A. Romero, Night of the Living Dead. This was the first time audiences were introduced to zombies that were a bit different from their folkloric roots. In Romero's world, zombies weren't under the control of a sorcerer. Instead, they were terrifyingly autonomous, a swarm of flesh-eating creatures reanimated by an unknown force. His zombies were slow, relentless, and stripped of any trace of their humanity, functioning more as a terrifying force of nature than individual beings. Romero's film was revolutionary. It set the foundation for what we now think of as the modern zombie, a monster driven not by magic, but by science fiction. In Night of the Living Dead, there's no priest or curse involved. There's no clear explanation for why the dead are coming back to life. This lack of clarity, this unknown, made the zombies even scarier. Here, death wasn't the end, and these creatures reflected a new cultural fear: the collapse of society itself. Romero's zombies symbolized everything from unchecked consumerism to loss of individuality. And his films showed how fragile the social order really is. In the face of such an unstoppable threat, following Romero's work, zombie horror became a genre in its own right, spawning countless films and eventually influencing other forms of media. Through the 80s and 90s, zombies evolved yet again, becoming faster, more aggressive, and in some cases, even more intelligent. Films like Return of the Living Dead and 28 Days Later broke new ground by giving zombies more physical abilities, heightening the tension. Now, they weren't just creepy figures, they were agile predators, capable of sprinting after their victims, which added a whole new level of fear. Then came the 2000s, and zombies exploded in popularity like never before. They weren't just confined to horror films, they became pop culture icons, appearing in TV series, comics, and even video games. The rise of video games like Resident Evil and Left 4 Dead made zombies interactive, allowing players to face off against these creatures firsthand. Games gave fans a new sense of agency over the fearsome monsters. Here was a world where you could actually fight back, adding an element of excitement to the horror. TV series like The Walking Dead took this trend to a whole new level. Debuting in 2010, The Walking Dead didn't just depict zombies as monsters to be feared, but explored the complex, emotional toll of a world overrun by them. The show delved into the struggles of survival, the breakdown of morality, and the lengths people would go to in a world where society has crumbled. The zombies themselves became a backdrop for a larger narrative about humanity's resilience and fragility. And with its massive success, the show solidified zombies as more than just horror elements. They became vehicles for exploring human nature. Zombies in pop culture also began to shift from purely horrifying creatures to ones that could even be sympathetic or comedic. Movies like Shaun of the Dead showed that zombies could be funny, while films like Warm Bodies gave us zombies as romantic leads, exploring ideas of redemption and transformation. By the 21st century, the zombie had transformed from a pure monster into a character that could express a wide range of themes, from existential dread to romance. In many ways, modern zombies reflect our own anxieties about disease, social collapse, and even our personal fears of losing control. But they're also highly adaptable. They change with the times, taking on new traits and new symbolism. Today's zombies can be fast or slow, deadly or comical, and they appear everywhere from blockbusters to indie films, TV series, and video games. They're symbols of our fears, but they're also endlessly reinvented, reimagined for each generation. And that's the fascinating thing about zombies in pop culture. They've become more than just movie monsters. They're a mirror, reflecting our society's changing fears, values, and ideas about life and death. In every era, they adapt to embody our deepest, darkest anxieties in a way that's strangely timeless. Now, let's explore some real-world stories and legends that hint at zombification across cultures and history. Surprisingly, the idea of the dead returning to life or of humans being controlled without their own will isn't unique to Haitian folklore. It's a concept that pops up all over the world, in cultures separated by oceans and centuries. Let's start with one of the oldest recorded beliefs, from ancient Mesopotamia, thousands of years ago. In these ancient texts, there were tales of the dead returning to plague the living. These were seen as spirits who had not received proper funerary rites or who had left unfinished business in the mortal world. According to these early myths, these undead beings weren't quite the flesh-eating zombies of modern horror, but they were terrifying in their own way, ghostly reminders that death, if not properly managed, could come back to haunt you in a very literal sense. Then there's the medieval European concept of the revenant. This was a being believed to rise from the grave, often to seek revenge or to complete some unfinished task. These revenants, or restless dead, could be family members or friends who, for some reason, couldn't find peace in the afterlife. Medieval societies held genuine fears of revenants. People would go to great lengths to prevent the dead from returning. Bodies were sometimes buried with heavy stones on their chests. Limbs were bound, or graves were even dug at crossroads to confuse spirits. In England and other parts of Europe, these revenants became the inspiration for early vampire stories. But they also share traits with modern zombies, especially the fear of loved ones returning in monstrous forms. Meanwhile, in parts of Scandinavia, there's a chilling concept called the draugr, a creature found in Norse mythology. Draugr were undead warriors who would rise from their graves to guard treasures or seek vengeance on the living. Unlike the zombie, they weren't mindless. They retained intelligence, strength, and supernatural powers. In Norse tales, draugr could shapeshift, control the weather, and even grow to enormous sizes. They were considered a serious threat, and their stories served as warnings against disturbing the dead or disrespecting burial rites. Moving to Africa, we find one of the most intriguing cases of zombification in the stories of the Kikuyu people of Kenya. They believed in a creature called the Kenyasha, which was not exactly dead but in a state of living death. A person whose soul had been trapped and controlled by others. The Kenyasha were feared, not for their physical threat, but for what they symbolized: a living person whose free will had been stripped away. Much like the Haitian concept of the zombie, this legend touched on the terrifying idea of a fate worse than death itself: the loss of autonomy and identity. In South Asia, there are also tales that echo this theme. Some ancient Indian texts describe beings who have been possessed or hollowed out and are forced to act against their will. In these stories, people's bodies are taken over by spirits or demonic forces, which is similar to the concept of the Haitian zombie, being controlled by a boker or sorcerer. In these cases, the undead were not driven by hunger for flesh, but were instead under the control of an external power, unable to resist or break free. And let's not forget the Chinese jiangshi, often referred to as a hopping vampire in English. Though not a traditional zombie, the jiangshi shares some fascinating traits. According to folklore, these creatures were reanimated corpses, cursed to wander the earth. They were said to hop rather than walk due to their rigor mortis stiffened limbs. The jiangshi hunts down the living to absorb their life force, and much like zombies, they represent an unnatural disturbance in the balance of life and death. Fear of the jiangshi was so strong that people took preventive measures, such as sealing coffins with strong materials, and burying the deceased with talismans to keep them at peace. All of these tales, from Draugr to jiangshi, highlight a universal human fear. The idea that death isn't final, that the dead might return in a disturbing form, and that life itself could be tainted by the influence of forces beyond our control. Whether as literal reanimated corpses, or as possessed souls trapped in their own bodies, these zombies remind us of what it means to lose autonomy, dignity, and humanity. What's fascinating is that these stories aren't just relics of ancient superstition. In some cultures, the fear of zombification remains a real part of life. In Haiti, for example, the belief in zombification still exists, and some people genuinely fear that they, or someone they know, could fall victim to it. And it's more than a tale of sorcery. It's a way to explain conditions that modern science might label as psychological or physical disorders, but which feel, to those affected, like a loss of self. So, while the modern zombie may have its roots in entertainment, the real-world fears and legends that inspired it are deeply woven into our collective human psyche. Across cultures, the dread of losing control over one's own body, of becoming something other than oneself, has haunted humanity for generations. And that's why the zombie, in all its forms, continues to strike such a deep and resonant chord with us. Now, let's explore one of the most eerie and fascinating examples of zombification found in the natural world, the zombie ant phenomenon. Unlike the zombies of folklore and fiction, these are real-life creatures whose behavior is taken over by an insidious fungus known as Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. This fungus has evolved a shockingly specific way of controlling its host's mind and body. And it's a perfect example of how strange and even sinister nature can be. So, here's how it works. Ophiocordyceps spores latch onto an unsuspecting ant, usually a member of the Campanotini tribe. Once the spore finds a suitable host, it attaches itself to the ant's exoskeleton and begins to release enzymes that slowly break down the ant's outer layers. After penetrating the body, the fungus releases chemicals that start altering the ant's behavior. The infected ant, now under the influence of the fungus, abandons its usual duties and begins a bizarre and deadly climb. Under normal circumstances, ants stay close to the colony, foraging for food or protecting the queen. But once infected, the zombie ant acts against its natural instincts. It climbs up vegetation, compelled to find a spot that's optimal for the fungus's growth, typically a leaf or twig in a warm, humid environment. And here's where it gets even stranger. The ant will bite down onto the leaf or twig with what's called a death grip, clamping its mandibles into the plant. This isn't just random, it's a precise behavior engineered by the fungus. At this point, The ant's body is essentially a puppet, doing the fungus's bidding. The fungus then consumes the ant from the inside out, using it as a living incubator. After a few days, a stalk-like structure erupts from the back of the ant's head. This stalk releases new spores into the environment, which then go on to infect other ants, and the cycle begins again. The entire process is tailored to maximize the fungus's ability to spread, with the ant's body acting as both a vehicle and a nursery. But Ophiocordyceps isn't unique in its manipulative powers. In fact, it belongs to a larger group of fungi, each adapted to control different insect hosts. In some cases, similar fungi infect spiders, causing them to build strange, web-like structures that protect the fungus as it consumes the spider. These adaptations are so specific and complex that scientists are still working to understand exactly how they evolved. How did these fungi develop the ability to manipulate their hosts so precisely? What chemical signals are they using to override the host's natural instincts? Each new discovery sheds light on how complex and, frankly, terrifying these microscopic organisms can be. And it's not just insects. In the animal kingdom, there are other cases of zombification. Take the lancet liver fluke, for example, a parasitic flatworm that has a similarly disturbing life cycle. It infects ants, taking over their behavior and making them climb up blades of grass, where they're more likely to be eaten by grazing mammals. Once inside the mammal, the fluke completes its life cycle, and eventually, its eggs are expelled in the host's feces, ready to infect the next unlucky ant. These cases are not only eerie, they're also scientifically intriguing. Scientists studying these phenomena hope to understand how organisms as simple as fungi or parasites can exert such powerful control over their hosts. How do they know what behaviors to trigger? How have they evolved such specific abilities? It's almost as if they've perfected a form of biological mind control, using their hosts as vehicles for their own survival. Studying natural zombification might even have applications for human science. The chemicals that fungi and parasites use to influence their hosts' nervous systems could lead to insights into how we might manipulate biological processes in beneficial ways, perhaps even creating new medications. But for now, these real-life examples remind us that, in nature, the line between life and death, autonomy and control, is far thinner and far stranger than we might imagine. So, when it comes to zombies, you don't have to look to Hollywood for monsters. Nature itself has created some of the most mind-bendingly complex and chilling examples of control, using biology in ways we're only just beginning to understand. When we think of zombification, we often picture a lifeless body brought back to roam the earth. But what if I told you that certain biological processes in the animal kingdom create effects that seem eerily close to actual zombification? In nature, many organisms have developed mechanisms to control the behavior of other species, leading to what scientists sometimes call the zombie effect. This isn't magic, it's evolution, and it's deeply fascinating. So, how does it happen? Essentially, zombification in biological terms involves a host organism's behavior being overridden by a parasite or pathogen, which manipulates its host to further its own survival and reproduction. In most cases, the parasite isn't actually reviving a dead creature, but rather taking control of a living one in a way that resembles mind control. The fascinating and sometimes chilling part is that many of these parasites have evolved to target very specific behaviors in their hosts, influencing them in ways that are beneficial to the parasite's life cycle. Let's take the example of Toxoplasma gondii, a parasite known to infect rodents, especially mice. Infected mice exhibit a strange behavioral change. Instead of avoiding cats, which are their natural predators, they're actually attracted to the smell of cat urine. This isn't just a random side effect, it's a highly evolved mechanism. The toxoplasma parasite can only reproduce within the intestines of a cat. By altering the mouse's behavior to make it more likely to be eaten by a cat, the parasite is effectively manipulating the host's actions to ensure it reaches its preferred environment for reproduction. What's happening on a cellular level is equally fascinating. Studies have shown that Toxoplasma gondii forms cysts in the brains of infected mice, specifically targeting areas related to fear and risk perception. By altering chemical signals in these brain regions, the parasite effectively turns off the mouse's natural aversion to cats. This is an example of a parasite bypassing the host's usual survival instincts and exerting control over its behavior, all to complete its own life cycle. If that doesn't sound like a form of biological zombification, I don't know what does. Another astonishing example comes from a group of parasitic wasps, known as Hymenopomyces argyraphaga. These wasps target orb-weaving spiders. The wasp stings and temporarily paralyzes the spider, laying an egg on its abdomen. When the larva hatches, it injects chemicals into the spider's body, which cause the spider to spin a highly specific type of web, one that's different from its usual web pattern, but perfect for supporting the larva's cocoon. After the web is built, the larva consumes the spider and attaches itself to this specially constructed web. This process is so exact that scientists believe the wasp's larva somehow alters the spider's neural circuits, effectively reprogramming it to create a web that serves the larva's needs. While these processes might seem bizarre or even grotesque, they serve as powerful examples of evolution's ingenuity. The zombie effect shows us how a parasite or pathogen can exploit its host to astonishing degrees, often adapting to manipulate highly specific aspects of the host's behavior. Such precision has led scientists to wonder how these parasites evolved to understand and target behaviors so effectively. Did natural selection gradually refine these mechanisms, allowing each generation of parasites to alter host behavior in more specific ways? How are chemical signals and neural pathways involved, and could similar principles apply to other forms of behavioral control? Understanding these natural zombie mechanisms could have practical applications for humans. Researchers are looking into how these pathogens interact with the nervous system, hoping to unlock secrets that might help in treating neurological diseases, or even controlling harmful behaviors. By studying how simple organisms like fungi and parasites can manipulate behavior, scientists might uncover new insights into brain function, neural networks, and the biochemical signals that regulate behavior. It's a field that merges neurology, biochemistry, and evolutionary biology, all sparked by the surprising phenomenon of natural zombification. So, while the zombies of pop culture may seem like fiction, nature itself provides plenty of real-life examples of zombified behavior. It's a reminder that life on Earth holds more mysteries than we might think, with complex systems of control and survival that sometimes seem like they're straight out of a science fiction story. Alright, let's dive into another layer of real life. Zombification caused by infections and parasites that affect the behavior of their hosts. This phenomenon isn't exclusive to the natural world. We're starting to see how microbes, parasites, and even viruses can drastically alter an organism's behavior, sometimes leading to outcomes that are eerily similar to our idea of zombies. One well-known example is rabies, a viral infection that affects mammals, including humans. Rabies is spread through bites, and it works by targeting the central nervous system. Once infected, the virus moves along the nerves, eventually reaching the brain. There, it begins to manipulate the host's behavior in ways that maximize its own chance of spreading. The infected animal often becomes highly aggressive and prone to biting, which helps the virus transmit to new hosts. This aggressive behavior is accompanied by extreme symptoms: confusion, hallucinations, and sometimes uncontrollable fear of water. Symptoms that seem almost like something out of a horror film. But what's truly fascinating is the virus's precision. By altering neural pathways, rabies effectively overrides natural instincts, turning a typically calm animal into a biting, frenzied vector of infection. In some ways, it's as if the virus has reprogrammed the host to spread the infection. Much like the zombies in popular culture that infect others through bites. Beyond viruses, there are several types of parasites that can produce zombie-like effects, especially among insects. One particularly interesting case involves parasitic worms known as hairworms, which infect insects like crickets. Hairworms are aquatic and can only reproduce in water, so they face a unique challenge when their host is a land-dwelling insect. Here's where things get strange. After developing inside the cricket, the hairworm releases chemicals that manipulate the cricket's brain, compelling it to seek out water. Once near a water source, the infected cricket jumps in, where the hairworm emerges, leaving the cricket to drown. It's a chilling but brilliant strategy, allowing the parasite to return to its preferred environment. Another shocking example is the Leucochloridium flatworm, a parasite that infects snails. The flatworm's life cycle is complex, and requires it to be eaten by a bird to continue. So, when it infects a snail, it actually takes control of the snail's eye stalks, making them pulse and change color, in a way that resembles the appearance of a caterpillar or maggot. This visual transformation makes the snail more appealing to birds, which are the flatworm's next host. The infected snail, essentially a puppet at this point, climbs to higher and more exposed spots to ensure it gets noticed. Once the bird eats the snail, the flatworm can complete its reproductive cycle. These cases highlight a key feature of natural zombification: how parasites and pathogens can manipulate specific behaviors to serve their own needs. The level of precision here is astonishing, and scientists are still investigating how these organisms know what to do. The prevailing theory is that evolution has fine-tuned their methods over countless generations, allowing parasites and pathogens to alter behaviors as needed. For example, many of these parasites likely release specific neurochemicals, or manipulate hormonal pathways, that influence decision-making and risk perception in their hosts. In a broader sense, these examples illustrate a universal struggle for survival in nature. Every organism is programmed to find ways to reproduce, even if it means hijacking another creature's body to do so. The zombie-like effects caused by infection and parasitism are just another facet of nature's complex web of survival mechanisms, and they remind us of how delicate the boundary between self-control and external control can be. So, while humans don't face the risk of turning into literal zombies, we do see how the natural world uses zombification as a tool for survival. In studying these cases, scientists hope to unlock insights into brain function, behavioral triggers, and the biochemical processes that might one day have applications in medical research or neurological studies. The zombies of horror stories may be fantasy, but these real-world parasites and pathogens show that the concept isn't as far-fetched as we might think. Alright, let's address a question that's been on many people's minds: could humans actually become zombies? The idea of a human zombification might sound like pure fiction, but scientists have been exploring how certain conditions and diseases might cause behaviors that resemble those of zombies. Of course, we're not talking about the undead, rising from graves, or a virus that turns us into mindless, flesh-eating monsters. Instead, we're looking at medical and scientific phenomena that could create some eerie, zombie-like traits in humans. One of the closest real-world comparisons is what's known as Cotard's syndrome, sometimes called walking corpse syndrome. This is an incredibly rare mental disorder, where patients genuinely believe that they're dead or that parts of their body no longer function. Individuals with Cotard's syndrome might claim that they have no blood, that their organs have stopped working, or even that they don't exist. The disorder can be terrifying, both for those experiencing it and for those around them, as patients can sometimes appear unresponsive, as if disconnected from reality. While it's not zombification in the literal sense, it's one of the most striking examples of a psychological condition that mirrors the loss of personal identity we associate with zombies. Another area where we see zombie-like effects is in certain neurodegenerative diseases. Take, for example, the later stages of Parkinson's or Huntington's disease, where patients might lose control of their movements or experience a kind of frozen facial expression. Additionally, in advanced Alzheimer's disease, individuals may experience severe cognitive decline and lose the ability to recognize loved ones or remember their own identity. While these symptoms stem from degenerative changes in the brain rather than an external force, they nonetheless create a zombie-like detachment from self and surroundings, highlighting just how vulnerable human identity and autonomy can be to physical changes in the brain. Let's also consider the effects of certain drugs. Substances like bath salts, synthetic cathinones known for causing erratic and sometimes violent behavior, have been linked to cases where individuals exhibit aggression, disorientation, and a loss of self-control. In extreme cases, these drugs can lead to behaviors so erratic that they resemble the dangerous unpredictability often associated with zombies in horror stories. Similarly, certain hallucinogens can cause individuals to enter states where they're detached from reality, although usually not with the violent aggression often depicted in fiction. While these cases aren't true zombification, they show how the human mind can be altered to the point of appearing almost taken over. Another real-world example involves diseases that affect the brain's ability to control the body, like rabies in humans. Though incredibly rare due to vaccination, rabies in humans can cause symptoms such as confusion, aggression, and hallucinations as the infection progresses. Those affected might display disorientation, a heightened startle response, and unusual behavior. In this case, the person isn't under mind control, but the virus affects the brain in ways that alter behavior, creating a situation reminiscent of the aggression and loss of self we associate with zombies. Now, could a virus or parasite emerge that controls human behavior, like Ophiocordyceps does with ants? While this is highly unlikely, scientists have speculated about the potential for behavior-altering pathogens. For instance, the Toxoplasma gondii parasite, which we mentioned before, has been shown to influence human behavior in subtle ways. Studies suggest that individuals infected with Toxoplasma may be more likely to take risks or exhibit mild personality changes. The effects are nowhere near as dramatic as in other hosts, but they suggest that even human behavior isn't completely immune to microbial influence. In the future, advancements in neuroscience and biotechnology could potentially enable scientists to manipulate human behavior in ways that seem eerie. Imagine a scenario where certain drugs or implants could control mood or actions remotely. While such technology would have medical benefits, it also raises ethical concerns about autonomy and free will, bringing us closer to the realm of zombie-like control. So, could humans become zombies in the way movies depict? Likely not, but these real-world phenomena show us that behavior and self-awareness are more fragile than we might think. While human zombification isn't scientifically possible as we know it, the loss of identity, control, and autonomy, whether through illness, drugs, or future technologies, reminds us that the line between who we are and who we could become isn't as clear as it may seem. When we think about zombies, one of the things that often comes to mind is the idea of strange, unpredictable, or even violent behavior. While real-life zombification isn't possible in the way movies depict, certain illnesses and drugs can influence the brain in ways that result in behavior eerily similar to the mindless, erratic actions we associate with zombies. Let's take a closer look at how these factors can alter human behavior, sometimes in disturbing ways. First, let's talk about neurological diseases that affect cognition, movement, and personality. Conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease have profound impacts on the brain, causing memory loss, changes in behavior, and loss of motor control. In the later stages of these diseases, individuals may experience severe personality shifts, agitation, and confusion. It's not that they lose their humanity, but rather that their brain is no longer able to regulate thought, memory, and emotion in the usual way. To outsiders, this can look like a loss of self, almost as though the person is a shadow of their former self, reacting in ways that are completely unlike them. Another condition with striking zombie-like effects is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease (CJD), a rare but devastating brain disorder caused by infectious proteins known as prions. These prions cause rapid degeneration of brain tissue, leading to severe personality changes, memory loss, hallucinations, and involuntary muscle movements. People with CJD can experience jerky, spasmodic movements, and may seem almost as though they're possessed. The disease is fatal, progressing rapidly, and robbing individuals of their identity and motor function in a way that's disturbingly similar to zombie lore. Certain drugs can also induce strange and erratic behavior. One example is the synthetic drug known as Flakka, which has gained notoriety for causing extreme agitation, paranoia, and hallucinations. People under the influence of Flakka have been reported to act in unpredictable, sometimes violent ways. In some cases, individuals become so detached from reality that they seem almost unrecognizable to those who know them. Flakka can lead to a sense of invulnerability and extreme aggression, which has been compared to the mindless rage associated with zombies in fiction. Similar effects have been observed with other synthetic drugs, like bath salts, which can also induce psychotic episodes, hallucinations, and violent outbursts. Then, there's schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders, which, although not at all related to zombification, can cause symptoms that might remind people of the loss of control over behavior and thought. People with schizophrenia may experience delusions, hallucinations, and episodes of disorganized speech or behavior. In some cases, they may act in ways that are hard to understand for those around them, as though they are in a reality that's entirely separate from our own. While this isn't zombification in any sense, it does highlight how our perception of others' behavior can be influenced by their mental state, especially when that state makes them seem detached from reality. There's also an intriguing phenomenon known as the autopilot state, which can occur in extreme cases of sleepwalking or fugue states. People in these states are able to perform actions, sometimes complex ones, without conscious awareness. Sleepwalkers have been known to walk, drive, and even eat while asleep, with no memory of their actions when they wake. These behaviors are initiated by the brain without input from the conscious mind. And while they aren't zombie-like in the classic sense, they do involve the body acting without conscious control, almost like a puppet on strings. Understanding these examples of brain disorders and the effects of certain drugs helps us see that, while human zombification may be pure fiction, the brain's ability to shape behavior is both powerful and fragile. With the right triggers, whether disease, injury, or substances, the brain can create behaviors that seem alien or even frightening to those who witness them. And as scientists continue to study how the brain regulates thought, mood, and movement, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities of consciousness and how easily it can be disrupted. So while the classic zombie of horror films may remain a myth, these real-world cases of altered behavior remind us of just how much our brains control, and how easily that control can be taken away. Alright, let's tackle one of the biggest questions. What makes movie zombies different from real-life zombification? Pop culture has given us a very specific image of zombies: groaning, decaying, and mindlessly attacking anything in their path. But the real science behind so-called zombie behaviors is a lot different, and actually, much more complex. In most films, zombies are reanimated corpses, brought back to life by some sort of virus, radiation, or even black magic. Once turned, these zombies lose all sense of humanity. They're relentless, often fueled by an insatiable hunger for flesh or brains, and are completely immune to pain or fear. This version of the zombie emphasizes the horror of losing one's mind and autonomy, becoming nothing more than a shell controlled by primal instincts. Movies often use zombies as metaphors for societal fears, like the loss of individuality, the spread of disease, or even mindless consumerism, as famously depicted in George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. In the real world, however, there's no virus or pathogen that can reanimate the dead. When someone dies, the body begins to break down almost immediately. Cells stop functioning, organs cease, and decomposition sets in within hours. Science tells us that reversing this process is impossible with current technology. So, when we think of zombification, we're really talking about altered behavior in living beings, often caused by parasites, drugs, or diseases that impact the brain. Unlike in films, where zombies are driven by an external force that completely takes over, real-life zombification tends to involve more subtle behavioral changes. The host's body is alive, but certain behaviors are manipulated for the benefit of another organism, like a parasite or pathogen. Another key difference is how contagion is portrayed. In movies, a single bite can turn someone into a zombie within minutes, creating a terrifying chain reaction. But in reality, infections that affect the brain and behavior, like rabies, take days or even weeks to show symptoms, and they don't turn the infected person into a mindless, aggressive monster. While the rabies virus does cause aggression and behavioral changes, it doesn't remove the infected person's identity or turn them into a flesh-eating creature. Then there's the issue of strength and resilience. In films, zombies are often depicted as nearly indestructible, continuing to move even after losing limbs or sustaining fatal injuries. This creates a powerful image of a relentless, unstoppable force. But real diseases and parasites that affect behavior, don't provide superhuman strength or immunity to pain. In fact, most pathogens weaken the body, as their goal is to spread to new hosts, not to create an unstoppable killing machine. Parasites like Toxoplasma and Ophiocordyceps are highly specialized, altering specific behaviors without giving the host any superhuman abilities. And let's talk about the portrayal of mindlessness. Movie zombies are famous for their vacant, empty expressions and lack of communication. But real-world behavior changes, even in severe cases, like Cotard's syndrome or advanced neurodegenerative diseases, don't eliminate all traces of personality. People with these conditions may seem detached or unaware, but they retain elements of their former selves. Their humanity isn't erased, they are still individuals, even if they are struggling with symptoms that change how they interact with the world. Lastly, movies often use zombies to explore deeper themes of existential dread and the unknown, playing on our fear of what we can't control or fully understand. While real zombification phenomena are fascinating and, at times, unsettling, they remind us of the incredible complexity of the natural world and the lengths some organisms will go to survive. Real-life zombies show us how behavior can be altered, but they also highlight that we're still far from the apocalyptic scenarios depicted in fiction. So, while Hollywood zombies are designed to shock and horrify, real-world zombification is more about the subtle and strange mechanisms of nature. It's a reminder that while we may never face a zombie apocalypse, the science behind these phenomena is just as captivating and, in its own way, even more chilling. When we think about zombie research, it might seem like something out of a science fiction movie, rather than a field that could contribute to modern medicine. But interestingly, studying the mechanisms behind zombification in nature can provide crucial insights for medical research. Whether it's parasites that control behavior, diseases that alter brain function, or even concepts of reanimation, zombie research has surprising potential to advance our understanding of the human body and mind. One of the most promising areas is neuroscience. By studying how parasites and pathogens manipulate the nervous systems of their hosts, researchers are gaining insights into how behavior is controlled on a molecular level. For instance, parasites like Toxoplasma gondii and the infamous Ophiocordyceps fungi have developed ways to bypass or manipulate host behaviors to serve their needs. Understanding the biochemical pathways they use to alter behavior could potentially lead to breakthroughs in treating neurological disorders. Imagine if we could harness similar mechanisms to correct brain function in conditions like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or even severe anxiety and depression. Another area of potential impact is in developing treatments for viral infections and neurodegenerative diseases. Viruses like rabies, which affect the brain and lead to aggressive behavior, offer unique insights into how pathogens can influence the central nervous system. By studying how rabies and similar viruses affect brain tissue and alter behavior, scientists hope to find new ways to protect the brain from infection, and possibly even repair brain damage caused by viral attacks. There's also a great deal of interest in the field of immunology. Zombie research has led scientists to explore how organisms defend themselves against parasitic mind control. Some species have evolved remarkable defense mechanisms to counteract parasitic manipulation. For example, certain types of ants avoid areas where they detect Ophiocordyceps spores, effectively protecting themselves from infection. By studying these natural defenses, we might discover new ways to bolster the human immune system, creating vaccines or treatments that could protect against neurological infections, or even prevent certain types of brain disease. Furthermore, zombie research pushes the boundaries of what we know about consciousness and identity. Conditions like Cotard's syndrome, where patients believe they're dead, or cases of extreme brain injury, raise important questions about what it means to be conscious, and how much of our personality and behavior depends on brain function. Understanding how certain conditions erase or transform an individual's sense of self could one day lead to therapies that help people regain lost aspects of their personality or memory. After severe trauma or degenerative illness, one of the most futuristic applications of this research could be in the realm of biostasis or suspended animation. Scientists studying reanimation and zombification in animals are looking at how certain organisms can shut down their bodily functions to survive extreme conditions. Tardigrades, for example, can go into a kind of hibernation state, surviving without food, water, or air for years. If we can understand and apply similar principles to human medicine, it could open up possibilities for long-term space travel or emergency medical treatments, where slowing down metabolic functions could give doctors valuable time to perform life-saving procedures. So, while zombies may be fictional, the research inspired by zombie-like phenomena in nature is very real and holds significant potential. From neuroscience to immunology and beyond, the study of zombification has opened up new frontiers in understanding the brain and body. And who knows, the next major breakthrough in treating brain diseases, or even expanding human capabilities, might just come from studying the eerie science of zombies. Exploring zombie research and the science of behavior control brings us face to face with some significant ethical questions. On one hand, understanding how to influence or manipulate behavior has the potential to unlock treatments for a range of neurological disorders. But on the other, it raises concerns about how this knowledge might be used or misused, especially when it comes to controlling human thoughts and actions. As science pushes the boundaries of what's possible, finding a balance between ethical responsibility and scientific discovery becomes essential. One of the primary ethical concerns involves the concept of autonomy, the idea that individuals have the right to control their own bodies and minds. Many zombie-related studies explore how parasites or infections override natural behaviors, prompting questions about what would happen if such techniques were applied to humans. Imagine if we could manipulate chemicals in the human brain to control fear, aggression, or even decision-making. While this could benefit those suffering from severe mental illnesses, it also brings up the possibility of misuse, especially in areas like law enforcement, military applications, or even advertising. If we could influence behavior on such a fundamental level, who decides how, when, and why it's acceptable to do so? There's also the matter of consent. In medical research, obtaining informed consent from participants is a cornerstone of ethical practice. However, when we're dealing with studies aimed at manipulating behavior, obtaining true consent can be complex. For example, patients with certain mental health disorders or cognitive impairments might not be fully aware of how a treatment could alter their behavior. This creates a dilemma: should we prioritize potential benefits, or should we protect individuals' rights to remain uninfluenced in their decisions? Furthermore, there's the risk of unintended consequences. While zombie research is largely inspired by nature, applying these principles to humans could lead to unpredictable outcomes. For example, if scientists develop drugs to enhance certain desirable traits, like focus or calmness, what happens if they also suppress other essential aspects of personality? These treatments might not just alter behavior temporarily, but could permanently change who a person is. In exploring the mechanisms of control, we need to be cautious of crossing a line where we're no longer curing or improving, but fundamentally altering human identity. Another concern is the potential for dehumanization. Studying ways to control behavior can create a mindset where people are seen as machines, collections of neurons and chemicals that can be adjusted or controlled. If we begin to view humans purely in biological terms, we risk losing sight of the importance of individual personality and the complexity of human experiences. The last thing society needs is a future where people are programmed to behave in specific ways, losing the diversity of thought and behavior that makes us human. Lastly, as technology and neuroscience advance, society must remain vigilant about who holds the power to use these discoveries. Governments, corporations, and other powerful institutions could see behavioral manipulation as a tool to further their own agendas. Imagine a scenario where corporations could subtly influence consumer behavior, or governments could reduce dissent by altering how people respond to authority. Ensuring that scientific research is used ethically and transparently is critical, and it's a conversation that must include scientists, ethicists, and the public. In the end, the goal of zombie research isn't to control or override free will, but to better understand the underlying mechanisms of behavior, identity, and consciousness. If we approach this research thoughtfully, with strict ethical guidelines, it holds incredible promise for improving mental health treatments and deepening our understanding of the human brain. But as we explore these boundaries, we must always remember the importance of autonomy, consent, and respect for the individual. Finding the right balance will allow us to benefit from scientific discoveries, while protecting the values that define humanity. Let's think ahead. What would it take to prevent zombification effects in humans? Of course, we're not talking about warding off a zombie apocalypse. Instead, we're looking at ways to protect the human brain and body from infections, parasites, and diseases that can alter behavior or cognitive function in ways that resemble zombie-like symptoms. As we understand more about the science of behavior-altering diseases, new research aims to protect us from these kinds of effects, opening up some exciting possibilities for the future. First, one major area of focus is on preventing neurological infections. Diseases like rabies and certain brain-affecting parasites offer scientists insight into how pathogens invade and impact the central nervous system. By understanding the mechanisms these pathogens use to cross the blood-brain barrier, the protective shield that usually keeps harmful agents out of the brain, researchers can develop more effective vaccines or antiviral drugs that block infections before they reach the brain. Imagine a vaccine that could protect against not only rabies but other brain-infecting viruses or bacteria as well. This kind of research has the potential to prevent a range of infections that might otherwise lead to severe cognitive changes or erratic behavior. There's also promising research on strengthening the immune system's ability to recognize and respond to behavior-altering parasites. Scientists are studying how certain animals, like ants, recognize the presence of Ophiocordyceps spores and avoid areas of high risk. If we can understand the genetic or biochemical markers these organisms use, it might be possible to apply similar principles to human medicine. This could mean creating treatments that help the human immune system identify and attack parasites or infections that target the nervous system, essentially boosting our natural defenses against behavioral manipulation. Another potential avenue is neuroprotective therapies, treatments designed to protect brain cells from damage caused by toxins, infections, or degenerative diseases. Many of the parasites and pathogens that affect behavior do so by damaging or hijacking specific parts of the brain. Scientists are researching compounds that could act as brain shields, blocking harmful agents from reaching or affecting these critical regions. These neuroprotective agents might not only defend against behavior-altering diseases, but also offer protection against the effects of aging, Alzheimer's, and other neurodegenerative conditions. In addition to direct prevention, researchers are also exploring ways to detect early signs of neurological manipulation. Advances in brain imaging technology, for example, might one day allow doctors to identify subtle changes in brain activity that indicate the presence of a pathogen or parasite. If caught early, patients could receive targeted treatments to neutralize the threat before it progresses. Early detection is crucial, especially for conditions that may not show symptoms until it's too late. In the case of behavioral manipulation, this could mean monitoring brain patterns for signs of irregular activity and responding quickly with interventions. Finally, as we move toward a future with sophisticated biomedical technology, the potential for gene editing presents another option. Techniques like CRISPR could theoretically allow scientists to alter genetic structures to make people more resistant to certain infections or parasites that might affect the brain. While this area is still highly experimental and raises ethical questions, it represents a new frontier in preventing diseases that affect brain function. In short, while the concept of zombification may seem far-fetched, protecting the brain from external manipulation is a very real area of study. Research inspired by zombie-like effects in nature could eventually lead to breakthroughs that protect us from a wide range of neurological threats. This kind of proactive approach ensures that, as our understanding of the brain and behavior grows, so too does our ability to safeguard our mental autonomy and identity. And as science continues to advance, we can feel increasingly confident that the strange, mind-altering effects seen in nature will remain just that, a fascinating reminder of nature's complexity, rather than a threat to humanity. As we wrap up, let's take a look at the fascinating connection between zombie legends and science. The image of the zombie, as we know it, is rooted in folklore. But it's also a powerful reflection of real-world fears and questions about the human body, mind, and what makes us truly alive. By examining zombie stories through a scientific lens, we uncover the deep links between cultural legends and real phenomena that exist in nature and the human brain. Zombie legends are ancient and found in different forms across the world. From the Haitian zombie, controlled by a sorcerer, to the European revenant rising from the grave, these stories tap into universal fears: the loss of autonomy, the return of the dead, and the unsettling idea of a mind separated from its body. In modern times, movies and books have taken these fears and built upon them, creating the classic zombie image: a decaying creature, stripped of personality, driven only by hunger. This version reflects our concerns about disease, the collapse of society, and even the ethical limits of scientific experimentation. What's truly fascinating is that, as science advances, we're finding that these fictional ideas are closer to reality than we might have thought. The natural world is filled with examples of parasites and pathogens that manipulate behavior in ways reminiscent of zombie lore. From Ophiocordyceps fungi controlling ants to rabies affecting the brain, nature has its own version of zombification. These examples remind us that the boundaries between life and death, autonomy and control, aren't as clear as we'd like to believe. Scientific research inspired by these real-life zombies has given us valuable insights into neuroscience, immunology, and even behavioral psychology. By studying how parasites manipulate behavior, scientists have learned more about how the brain controls actions and how it can be influenced or disrupted. This research has opened up possibilities for treating neurological diseases, protecting against brain infections, and understanding the biochemical roots of behavior. In a way, the zombie serves as a bridge between science and culture, showing us how human fears and questions can inspire scientific exploration. While the walking corpses of fiction may remain fictional, the science behind behavior, brain manipulation, and infection is very real. And as we continue to explore these areas, we not only demystify age-old fears but also deepen our understanding of what it means to be alive, conscious, and in control of our own minds. So, next time you see a zombie in a movie, remember, while it may be fiction, the inspiration behind it is rooted in real phenomena that scientists are still working to understand. The connection between zombies and science isn't just a curiosity. It's a reminder of how cultural stories can inspire us to explore the unknown, bridging the gap between imagination and reality. So why does it matter that we understand these so-called zombie phenomena? Why invest time and research into something that, on the surface, seems like pure fiction? The answer lies in what this knowledge reveals about both the human brain and the natural world, and in how it opens up possibilities for medical, ethical, and even philosophical advancements. First and foremost, studying zombie phenomena teaches us more about the brain and how behavior can be influenced or even manipulated. Understanding how certain parasites or diseases alter behavior allows us to uncover the mechanisms of brain function on a deeper level. These insights help in developing treatments for neurological and psychiatric conditions, especially those that affect cognition, memory, and personality. As we learn more about how behaviors are triggered or suppressed, we gain tools to better address complex mental health issues, from anxiety and PTSD to dementia and schizophrenia. Ultimately, knowledge gained from these studies could lead to breakthroughs in managing or even preventing these conditions. Beyond medicine, there's the ethical dimension. As we learn how certain organisms manipulate behavior, it raises questions about free will, autonomy, and what it means to be truly in control of our actions. These questions are not only philosophical, but increasingly relevant as technology and neuroscience evolve. Imagine if we could someday harness what we've learned from parasites and use it to influence human behavior. How should society handle the ethical questions that arise from such powerful knowledge? Understanding zombie phenomena helps us confront these issues and encourages the responsible application of scientific knowledge. In addition, this research fosters a greater appreciation for the complexity and adaptability of life on Earth. Studying the ways organisms interact, how some can control others to survive, reminds us of the endless variety and ingenuity within nature. Every new insight into a parasite's life cycle or a fungus's influence on its host opens up new questions and challenges our perceptions of life and intelligence. This curiosity-driven approach expands the boundaries of scientific discovery, reminding us that the natural world holds countless mysteries yet to be unraveled. Finally, there's something deeply human about our interest in zombies and the concept of behavior manipulation. These studies tap into primal fears of losing control, of being influenced against our will, of the body becoming a stranger. By examining and understanding these fears scientifically, we transform them from sources of anxiety into sources of knowledge. Instead of just fearing the unknown, We are empowered to study and understand it, and in doing so, we strengthen our grasp on who we are and what it means to be human. In the end, understanding zombie phenomena is not just about demystifying strange behaviors. It's about leveraging this knowledge to improve medicine, address ethical questions, and appreciate the intricacies of life itself. In a world where science continually pushes the limits of what we know, exploring these concepts reminds us that even our strangest fears can lead to valuable, meaningful discoveries. As we look to the future, the question arises: how might advancing science and technology offer answers to the mysteries surrounding zombie phenomena? While zombies remain largely within the realm of fiction, the real-world insights gained from studying behavior-altering parasites, neurological diseases, and mind control in nature could have profound implications for the future of medicine, psychology, and even ethics. One of the most promising areas is the continued development of neuroscience and brain mapping technologies. Imagine if we could fully map the pathways of the human brain, responsible for behaviors, emotions, and memories. This would allow us not only to treat neurological diseases more effectively, but to understand precisely how behavior is shaped, with tools like advanced imaging and brain-computer interfaces. Scientists might one day detect early signs of neurodegenerative diseases, or prevent behavioral changes before they start. This technology could act as a safeguard, protecting individuals from conditions that mimic zombie-like symptoms, such as memory loss, personality shifts, and impaired cognition. Another future application is in the field of biotechnology, specifically gene editing. Techniques like CRISPR already allow scientists to alter genetic code with remarkable precision. As we learn more about the genes that influence behavior and neurological resilience, we might be able to develop treatments that reduce susceptibility to brain-infecting diseases or behavior-altering parasites. Imagine a future where gene therapy could immunize individuals against certain pathogens, or even enhance cognitive resilience, creating a layer of defense against conditions that lead to drastic personality or behavioral changes. There's also exciting potential in the field of synthetic biology, where scientists are working to develop smart medicines that can target specific cells or brain regions without affecting surrounding tissue. In the future, we might see medicines that act like behavioral safeguards, drugs that could counteract the effects of a pathogen or toxin before it disrupts brain function. Such treatments could prevent infections from taking over the nervous system and causing the kinds of symptoms we see in cases like rabies or certain parasitic infections, offering a proactive solution against neurological manipulation. Furthermore, future research into artificial intelligence and machine learning could help us understand complex behavior patterns and predict how diseases might alter brain function. By analyzing vast amounts of data, AI could potentially detect subtle behavioral changes that indicate early signs of infection or neurological issues. With this information, healthcare providers could intervene before these conditions lead to severe symptoms, ultimately preserving mental health and autonomy. But with all these advancements, it's also important to consider the ethical questions they raise. As we gain the ability to influence and perhaps even control human behavior, society will face difficult questions about autonomy, consent, and the potential misuse of these technologies. Future science may offer answers to zombie-like phenomena, but it will also challenge us to handle this knowledge responsibly, ensuring that breakthroughs meant to protect individual autonomy aren't used to diminish it. In the end, the zombies of science fiction might stay in the realm of movies, but the science they inspire holds real potential for improving human health and understanding the brain. The future of science could give us tools not only to prevent or treat neurological diseases, but also to understand the nature of consciousness and individuality itself. And in this journey, our exploration of zombie phenomena becomes more than just a curiosity, it becomes a path toward unlocking the full potential of the human mind. If you found this video helpful or interesting, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.